Shalom, everybody. This is the
Shalom.
first session of our Jewish services class. And I'm just so thrilled that you all wanted to take it. Some of you might end up leading all or part of a service, but this first class is really going to be more about what is in a Jewish service and how is an Erev Shabbat service different from the basic traditional morning blessings. Anita, I see you already raised your hand. Yes, hello.
Before we start, could we do Shechianu?
Absolutely. It's always good to start with a blessing, and this is the blessing for starting something new. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh.
Amen.
Holy One, blessing your presence fills creation. Thank you for giving us life, Chaim, and health, and sustaining us through all our challenges and bringing us to this memorable moment.
Amen.
Let us start with some slides to illustrate what the service is all about, because there is a difference, like we just said, a blessing, and it elevates you. You come to a service, no matter how you come in, hopefully you leave at a different level, feeling more uplifted. So let's see how that works. Let me just, it's different when I look at all of you. Here we go, share. Okay. So this is Leading Jewish Prayer Services, and these are the dates. I hope you have them in your calendar. It will be recorded, and so you can use that as review. And for the people who are excused, I will say they can watch the recording, and hopefully they'll come to as much in person as possible so that they can ask their questions. Let's just see who's here. So we have Sheila and Sybil and Mary and Anita, and we have Harold and Susan. Thank you for coming. I hope you're feeling well.
Thank you.
And Barbara.
Hi.
And Susan Zolk, and it's wonderful that you're in town. And Katie. Katie is Catherine Uram, and she's our newest member, and she'll be lighting candles this very Friday. So that's very exciting.
Welcome.
Yes, see, that's the way to jump in. You come to a new community and you just jump in and get involved. So this is a picture of a Siddur, which means, we say prayer book, but it means order, because there's an order, the way things were put into the prayer book to give us that elevated feeling. So here's an overview of the classes. This week will be an overview of Jewish prayer services in general, and some of it might surprise you, and I hope so. Next week will be a specific outline of Erev Shabbat service, and you will have a better understanding of what is special about Erev Shabbat and what is taken out because it is Shabbat. On the third week, we'll concentrate on the Torah service, the role of the Gabbai, and how they help whoever is the Torah reader, and all the materials that are needed. Then week 4, we'll get down to Tachlis, the actual needs of leading. We'll make a checklist of preparation, outlines, slides, the tech needs, the honors given out to members and guests, what music you have chosen, how to coordinate with volunteers and participants, and to be aware of the camera and microphones, because there is a certain performance aspect as well. On that last week, we'll have practice up at the Bima in the sanctuary for those who wish to lead services, and you're all welcome to watch that. But you really have to be here if you want to lead services, because I want to give you a chance to actually try it. Any questions this up to now? Yes, Susan.
I'm not sure that we're going to be able to make the 4th class in person. Can we watch it on Zoom?
You can, but then before you asked to lead, I would have to go over it with you. I would want you to have some personal practice up at the bima, because everything you know at your dining room table can go out the window the minute you're up there. Anybody who's done it knows it, including myself. Does that seem fair?
Fair enough, certainly.
Okay, good. I understand people's schedules are different and their needs are different. All I'm doing is trying to support you in being the best leader you can be and having the deepest understanding so that when you're up there, you'll feel comfortable and use whatever nervousness you feel to be excited and energized and passionate. You can just take that same heartbeat and label it differently.
I just want to say that I'm not taking this class to lead a service.
I understand. It's open to everybody, Susan.
Okay.
So let's dive in. When are there services? Well, there's supposed to be a daily morning service, which is the basis of all prayer liturgy. And there's also an afternoon and an evening service. And since the day starts in the evening, Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Boker, there was evening, there was morning in creation, we begin our description with Ma'ariv, evening after sundown. And that includes the preliminary prayers, the Shema and its blessings, the Amidah, the standing prayer, and concluding prayers. Those are the major elements in the evening service. Now, in the morning service, that's called Shacharit, because Shachar is dawn. It includes preliminary prayers, Shema and its blessings, Amidah, concluding prayers, and on Mondays, Thursdays, and Shabbat and holidays, it also includes a Torah reading. On Shabbat as well, there's a Haftarah reading. So usually the Torah reading is on Shabbat, and since we have our morning minyan on Wednesday, we don't have this Torah reading, but we do discuss the Torah service of that week, the Torah portion. Then comes Mincha, which is an afternoon service. It's much shorter. It just has preliminary prayers and the Amidah, and it only includes a Torah reading on Shabbat and Yom Kippur. We don't follow with that, but you should know that that's the traditional. So evening, morning, afternoon. Let's look more carefully at what that means. Why do you have 3 daily prayer services? Here's the usual explanation, that it comes with our patriarchs. Abraham in Genesis, it said, Abraham rose early in the morning. Aha, he must have been praying. And so we attribute the morning prayer to Abraham. Yitzchak, in Genesis, it says, Isaac went out meditating in the field toward evening. That's when he was going to meet his wife. And when she fell off her camel, that whole story. So, toward evening, it was the afternoon. We attribute the afternoon mincha prayer to Yitzchak. And Yaakov, Jacob, there is that phrase that says he came to that place and stopped there for the night. That's before he had that big dream. Well, that is one textual reason of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, morning, afternoon, and evening. But in fact, the prayer service are also substitutes for the sacrifices that were made in the temple in Jerusalem before its destruction in 70 CE. There was a morning, an afternoon, and an evening sacrifice. So those are 2 reasons why we have the daily prayers. Now, what's this relationship between prayer services and sacrifices? Let's look at that. The morning prayers, that's Shacharit, and the afternoon prayers, that's Mincha, correspond to the morning and afternoon sacrifices. So far, so good. But in the evening, there was not a sacrifice, but it derived rather from the obligation to say the Shema in the evening. Remember when we say in the Be'ahavta, you shall recite these words when you lie down at night and when you rise up in the morning. What are these words? It's Shema. Therefore, Shema is said in the evening and in the morning, but it's not part of the afternoon prayer. It's not part of Mincha. And recently, Mary, you asked me about that. And so we looked at it and we could see it started much further on in the Baruch Hu. So there was a time in Jewish history when Ma'ariv was an optional service, but today it's often appended to the Mincha service. If you've ever gone to a traditional Shiva minyan, they'll say it's Mincha Ma'ariv, right? Mincha Ma'ariv. They'll say it's afternoon, evening, and they'll do it as late as they can possibly do it in the afternoon so that it's already time for the evening service, and they do those two services connected. So Shacharit, Mincha, Mariv, morning, afternoon, which is a very short service, Mariv, which is a bit longer, but nothing like the morning service. Questions up to now? And this idea of connecting Mincha and Mariv together. Yes, Susan?
What about the Musaf? Isn't
That's on Shabbat. That's the
that
extra,
only on Shabbat?
right, because there was an extra Shabbat sacrifice, and that replicates that, and we don't do that. It's not part of Reform or Reconstructionist, and it is part of Conservative and Orthodox, and it depends what your background is, and so that's a very good question. That's Musaf means extra, so it's an additional service on Shabbat appended to the morning service. Thank you for that. So what's the basic structure of all the services? First, you've got warm-up prayers. You can't just jump right in. You're not ready yet. And these vary depending upon the time of the day and the occasion. Now, our Kabbalat Shabbat, the receiving of Shabbat, is an example of warm-up prayers for the Shabbat evening service. And that's something that we have many choices in our beautiful Mishkan Tefillah book. You'll be able to choose when you lead which readings, which psalms you'd like to do as part of a much longer Kabbalat Shabbat. The second big structure is Shema and its blessings. That's called a rubric, that it has a whole section, beginning with Baruch Hu, the call to worship, and including prayers on the themes of creation, revelation, and redemption. This is that whole section around the Shema. These prayers establish the common ground of belief and identity of the congregation. Why? We are creatures created by God, who is the creator of the universe. God gave our people the Torah, which was revealed at Mount Sinai, and which serves as our guide. And we look forward to a future redemption. We call it the Messianic age rather than a particular Messiah, which we understand from our past experience of redemption from slavery in Egypt, and which we expect will encompass the world with peace and justice. So that whole call to worship and having prayers on these themes of creation, revelation, and redemption replicate our whole history and our hopes for the future. We rise to the Amidah, also known as Ha-Tefillah, the prayer, or it's also called Shmon Esrei, 18, because originally there were 18. When we get to it, we'll study more why it is no longer 18. It's 19 now. The Amidah is the worshiper's opportunity to approach God in private prayer. So we recite words in the Siddur, in the prayer book, and we always give time for prayers in your own heart. That's the silent section. And the recitation of this prayer is a central religious obligation. So you have an Amidah whenever we come together for prayer. In more traditional settings, you'd first do it silently, and then you'd go back for the repetition of the Amidah, where the prayer leader would then chant it and you would go through it again. We have the practice of just going through it once and sometimes leaving more space for the silent prayer. Now, the weekday version of the Amidah is considerably longer than the Shabbat or Holy Day version, and we're going to look at why that is. So here's the Amidah. The sections are praises of God, petitions on the weekdays, but sanctification of the day on holy days, and prayers of thanksgiving. So 1 and 3 are the same, 2 changes on Shabbat. Here's the model. Yes.
Can you go back? What are petitions? What does the word mean?
It's where you ask for certain things. And I'm going to show that to you when we go into the details. If you ever come to Wednesday morning, you would know that we go through all the asking for things like justice, like health, like gathering of the exiles. There's all this 13 petitions that only happen on the weekday. And the reason you're asking this is because you don't see them on Shabbat. And you're going, what on earth is that? So a perfectly reasonable question. So I'm going to go over it in this section. You will find it. The model for this three-part structure, tripartite structure, is how one would approach a powerful ruler, since God is the sovereign of the universe. So let's say you would go up to a king, you would first honor the king and say how powerful that king is and offer your credentials. That's what we do. We say, you know, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the matriarchs, I come from that line. So you're doing that as if you're approaching the throne. And then you give your petition to the ruler, and then you thank them and you withdraw. It's the same model as the Amidah, where we're in front of God. On Shabbat, you see, we live as if the Messianic age has arrived, and we don't need to petition God. Therefore, we eliminate those petitions, those asking for certain blessings, and we replace them with prayers sanctifying the holy day. There's just one blessing, and it says we sanctify Shabbat and its holy day. And if sometimes we say, and it's the new moon, or it's a festival, but we're always sanctifying the holy day rather than asking for things. Then come the concluding prayers, and they begin with Aleinu, where we sort of come down the mountain, I usually say, and include Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, and some song on Shabbat. Very often it's Adon Olam. And this Aleinu, it is upon us, speaks of a time when idolatry will have vanished from our world, and God will be acknowledged by all humanity. And Kaddish, the mourner's prayer, is recited in memory of those who have died either recently, in the last week, in the last month, or the yahrzeit around this date on the Hebrew calendar. And we do accommodate those people who want it closer to the secular date. But it's a prayer recited in memory of those who died around this time in past years. So here's a diagram of the morning service. Those of you who come to Wednesday morning, this will be pretty familiar to you. And it's written like this because there's a sense of climbing a ladder. We start with the morning blessings, Birchot HaShachar. We move into Psuke de Zimra, verses of song. Then we move to that whole section of Shema and its blessings. Then we move on to the Amidah, the standing prayer with its petitions, because it's weekday, including silent prayer. If it's Monday or Thursday morning, or if it's Shabbat, there is a Torah service. And then we come down the mountain with concluding Aleinu, Kaddish, and a song. So there's a sense of growing, climbing, becoming, and returning. Let's look at another way to look at that. Those of you who have studied Kabbalah with me have heard of the four worlds. This is a four-world journey into the service. So it begins in Asiya, which is the world of doing and manifesting, and it's the world of duality. It's what we live in all the time. We have several prayers here with the morning coming awake blessings, and then we move up to the world of emotion and feeling and expression, and that is where we come into Psalms and a little bit more of, we're more awake. And we want to get to the world of Bria, which is the world of thinking, of applying, of understanding. And this is where we have the call to prayer. So you see how much it took to get us in the morning out of bed and the slumber from our eyes, and to thank God for being alive. And we come to the call to prayer. Then we have the, I call it the love sandwich. You have, we receiving love, the Shema, what we believe, oneness, and giving love, ve'ahavta, and the michamocha part, which is we have seen miracles, we are free people, and now we're ready and elevated to come to the high place, the Amidah, the standing prayer. There's a lot on this chart that's called Atzilut, from Eitzel, meaning near. This is where you're the nearest, let's say, to our Creator, to heaven, to spirituality, to the aha. And our hearts are open and we want that connection. Now I've put here the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, the Hey, which is the unpronounceable name of God. And it also replicates our body, our head, our shoulders and arms, our spine, our hips and legs, that we are created literally in the image of God. And these four letters often are shown to be part of the four worlds, going from God's creative yearning energy down through the template of the world to the materials of the world to this world that we live in. That was really on one foot very, very quickly. But I just wanted to show you that the service takes us through these worlds and up to a place where we're ready to have that mystical connection. And it's very hard to just jump up there. We need those gateways, which is what the word I often use. So we start where we are, sleepy, getting up, sleep in our eyes. And through the morning blessings and through these daily psalms, we finally come to calling each other to prayer and to the Shema, to the Amidah. And then we're not supposed to stay there in meditation, but rather to come down on Mondays, Thursdays, or Shabbat, or in our Friday night combined service, we do hear words of Torah as a kind of answer to our prayers. And then we come down the mountain with the concluding Aleinu, Mourner's Kaddish, and either Ein Keloheinu or Adon Olam or some closing song. Now, I have amended this chart because we hope that you don't just leave at the same level that you came in on, but rather a little more elevated to meet the day. That difference of where you came in and where you leave, that's the purpose of a service. That little bit of elevation that you leave and you carry it with you. That's why I added this arrow. So I see Sheldon has joined us. Welcome. And you'll be able to catch up on the first part.
Anita has a question.
Yes, Anita.
So on the previous slide, it's much more obvious that when we come down, we're at a higher level.
Yes.
The other slide is very informative.
Well,
Right.
you know, a model is just a model. And since I took it from Reb Marsha's book, I used what she had, but I like.
And you can see there is a little bit of higher.
Yes, but I'm
You pointed that out.
emphasizing that. And I'm so glad you said that, because no matter how we come in on a Friday night, when we let Shabbat in, we do feel on a higher level, I hope. And even on a weekday, there is a difference so that we can then do the work that our soul was meant to. So thank you for bringing that up. Now, let's compare the weekday with the Shabbat prayers. On the left, I have the Shacharit, which means morning, weekday service. This is the basis of all other services. Now, I'm taking it from Mishkan Tefillah, which is a Reform prayer book. When I teach Tefillah to cantors and rabbis, what I have on this side is a conservative or Orthodox prayer book, which has many, many more sections that are left out. So you should just know that. Very important to know that there are choices made in the Reform book, leaving out the replica or the recital of the sacrifices. We don't do that. And other sections that were considered repetitive and therefore were taken out. Our focus in this class is what are the prayers that you say in the morning and what is the equivalent in Erev Shabbat, not just an evening service, but Erev Shabbat services. This is called Kabbalat Shabbat. Kabbalah means receiving. So it's an idea of like almost like a receiving line or like a reception, that there's a kind of a party going on here where, oh, goody, Shabbat is coming. How do we greet her? And she's considered a bride, a queen, all of these personifications. So in the morning blessings, when you're just waking up, we thank God for being alive. We put on the talit and tefillin. We sing Matovu, which is entering sacred space. A prayer for our bodies, Asher Yatzar, like a check-in. And many of us get up with like crinks in our back, or we need, you got to go to the bathroom. There's all kinds of body stuff happening. That is part of the morning prayer, thanking God for creating our bodies with great wisdom. And many of you are healers in one way or another, or have just been through healing rehab and know that there is a process of healing with your body. So That's the thank you for the healing of our bodies. Then comes a prayer for our soul, because we're not just a vessel. We are, we hold a pure soul within this vessel of our body. And so we say body and soul right together in this morning wake-up call. Then we have the daily miracles, Nisim B'chol Yom, where we say, thank you, God, for giving us warmth and clothes and making the world, making the earth sturdy on the waters, and so many things we're grateful for. And each one of those can be taken away. And so we really should be grateful for it. Not only that, but when we say the daily miracles, you know, don't take it for granted that you can stand upright. Don't take it for granted. There could be a flood. Who says that the earth is above the waters? And when there are earthquakes and floods and fires, some of these, all of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, yes, yes, I don't take it for granted. Or that you can walk, you know, putting my feet firmly on ground. You can't always walk. Maybe you need crutches, maybe you need a walker. These are all things that remind us of the daily miracles. And they also say, if you've been given these wonderful gifts, are you helping others who are down in the dust to raise up, who are hostages to be able to be, to come home in peace? If people are hungry, that you feed them. So everything we've been given, we should be not only grateful for, but doing for others. So that is a very short version of a whole day's deep dive into the Nisim B'chol Yom, the daily miracles, which if you were going to be a rabbi or cantor, you would be studying in detail. Then comes Elu Dvarim. These are things you should do without keeping score. And it's like a tiny little moment of Torah study, because it comes from the Mishnah. You should honor your parents, and you should be kind, and you should visit the sick, and you should make peace between people. There's this moment of what's important. And we just had the Holiness Code in Leviticus this last Shabbat. So I'm still thinking about that and how we act in holy ways in the world. And then there's a kind of comma, a Kaddish. This is the learner's Kaddish, Kaddish de Rabbanan. And this whole section wakes us up, makes us feel in gratitude, and gets us ready for the next section. So that's morning. Let's move to Erev Shabbat. When we have Kabbalat Shabbat, how do we do that? We welcome people, and we have an introduction to candle lighting. We light the candles, which ushers in Shabbat. Once you've lit the Shabbat candles, traditionally, you wouldn't make fire of any other kind. You wouldn't light other candles. We, in our Reformed tradition, take it as a kind of symbolic opening of Shabbat, but we still honor Shabbat by doing this. Now, we want to get in the mood. It takes more than just lighting candles. We want some songs for Shabbat. And there are many choices. In our prayer book, it's pages 128 and 129. And I usually pick one, because if we did all of them, we'd be here till 11 at night. So there's Yedid Nefesh, Hachama Merosh, the sun on the treetops, Dodi Li, Kol Dodi, Ki Esh Merosh Shabbat, Elecham Dalibi, all of these psalms. And there are many ways, many psalms that are part of songs for Shabbat, and many different congregations have not only different choices, but different melodies. So songs for Shabbat. But we always want to do L'chadodi and Shalom Aleichem, which are part of that introduction to Shabbat. Again, they both have many melodies, and you can change them depending on the mood of that week. Sometimes more quiet and solemn, reflective, sometimes more joyous and upbeat, sometimes just because it's Anita's melody and that's the one I want to make her happy. And I know who's watching, and so I know your favorite melodies, and I try to accommodate that from time to time. Also, you don't want to get bored. Thank you, Anita. So you want to do different ones just so that people go, oh, I'm hearing that as if it's for the first time. Or perhaps they'll look at, while they listen, maybe they're looking at the translation, or maybe they're looking at a poem on the other side of the page. You want to offer many ways to help people prepare for Shabbat entering their hearts. So you see how much shorter that is, and without all of the morning blessings that you would have in the basic weekday Shabbat. We move now to the second part, and weekday, you also have blessed is the one who spoke and the world came into being. You have several Psalms. In our prayer book, just 100 and 145, leading up to Hallelujah, Psalm 150, and then a kind of Chatzi Kaddish, Ishtabach, and Chatzi Kaddish. Again, the Kaddishes in the middle of the services are like commas saying, we've entered a new world, we've finished that section, we're moving on to the next. It's a kind of comma. And it also says, remember, this isn't, the Chatzi Kaddish is not the mourner's Kaddish. It's just saying, we have just praised God and we can't possibly reach the heights or the depths or the meanings that God represents. And now we're going to go to the next section and try that again. That's really what it's all about. So there's a comma, and then we move to the next. You see, there's nothing to correspond to that on Erev Shabbat.
Here, let's see, means
Yes, Mary.
half.
Yeah.
Is that why we sing the Chatzi Kaddish when we don't have a melody for the mourner's Kaddish? To separate the two of them in our,
No, it's simply, that's a reasonable question, but I think it's just,
I don't-
it's got a cadence of comfort when you say it. And this way, there's no competition with which melody you would use. I've never heard mourner's Kaddish other than just spoken in a kind of cadence like that. Whereas the Kaddishes have very different melodies. A Friday night one's different from the weekday. We don't actually, I don't focus on that. I just want you to know what it is. That's a reasonable question. It's an original question. I've never been asked that before, so you get 2 points for that. Interesting. It's just spoken when it's mourner's Kaddish. Okay. So now we're in the third rubric, the Shema and her blessing. Sometimes it's called it, sometimes her. It's sort of personified. In the weekday, we have Baruch Hu, the call to worship, and you also have the Baruch Hu in the evening. However, in the morning, you want to praise God for light, for or. Thank you, God, for creating light. In the evening, we say Ma'ariv Aravim. Thank you, God, for mixing the light with the darkness and bringing on evening. So there's morning and evening. That's the corresponding prayer. In the morning, Ahava Rabbah is the prayer about God, you have loved us with a great love. In the evening, Ahavat Olam, it's the same thing. Also, you have loved us with a great love. And in some prayer books, they only have either Ahavat Olam or Ahava Rabbah, but in ours, we have Rabbah in the morning and Olam in the evening, but it still is an introductory love energy before we enter the realm of Shema, which I've bolded here. So Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad is what we're leading up to. But all of this, the call to prayer, the prayers leading up to Shema and coming out of Shema are a rubric. They're a whole section. And they are similar in the evening, where you have prayers before, something with love, and Shema, and followed by Ve'ahavta, and you shall love God with all your heart and soul and might. That's what this one says. And then going to Mi Chamocha and getting ready for the Amidah. Now, in the evening, you have an extra one. You have Mi Chamocha and Hashkivenu, because you want to lie down in peace and get up in peace. It's sort of preparing you for night. And since you had so much in the morning preparation early, you don't need anything here. Vishamru, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's optional, but that is God kept us and guarded us through Shabbat. And it is a sign for all of time, Otile Olam. And so that is an introduction to the Amidah on Erev Shabbat, just on Erev Shabbat, because it speaks of Shabbat. So far, any clarifications? Yes, Sheila.
You're explaining what they mean, but would you just explain or translate the words?
Yes, I have been doing that. Baruch Hu is the call to worship. Yotzer Or is the blessing for light. Ahava Rabbah is saying that God loves us. Shema is the one about oneness. Ve'ahavta, we chant about you shall love God with all your heart and soul and might. Michamocha is what we say about the miracle of leaving through the sea and coming out to freedom. And
What you're explaining is this long, but sometimes it's one word or two words.
right, because I need to do that in English since I want to explain what's in it, not just what the word means. So I'm telling you what's in the prayer, not just what the word is. Micha Mocha, just because the words in Hebrew are simply the first words of the prayer. Micha Mocha simply means who's like you. If I said who's like you, you wouldn't know what's in the prayer. But now I understand your question.
Good.
Yeah. So in Hebrew, the first word is what we call the prayer. But in English, I
Got it.
have to tell you what it's about. Same as the Torah portions. It's just the first word of the Torah portion. But when we talk about it, we say what is in the whole portion. Thank you for that. Now I understand better what you meant.
Thank you.
Now here's for an answer to you, Sheila, about what is in the Amidah in the morning and what's in Erev Shabbat. And I did it so that you could see what's missing or what is substituted for all of these petitions. And if you want, I'll go through them, but you don't have to remember any of this just to know that it exists. So the Amidah in the morning starts off with Avot Ve'imahot, the fathers and the mothers, the patriarchs and the matriarchs, where you are basically saying, this is my lineage and I have a right to be here. Same thing on Shabbat, Avot and Imahot, the fathers and the mothers. Of course, the traditional was just Avot, it was just the patriarchs, and we've added the Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. Then, just like when you approach the throne, you would honor the ruler by saying you are great and powerful. And so the Gevurot is God is very powerful. And sometimes there is an added dimension if it's on a special day. Some of the words might be changed, but still it's the same. Gevurot means powers or strengths. Kedusha means holiness. You see the word kadosh in there, something about holy. And this is you are holy, your name is holy, and we praise your name. And so these three sections are the same: morning, evening, and Shabbat. However, in the morning on weekdays, we have between 4 and 16 here, we have these, what we call petitions. Bina, we want wisdom. Teshuvah, we want the possibility of offering pardon and forgiveness. Slicha is that we would be pardoned. Geula is redemption. Refuah is healing. Birkat Shanim is that it should be a good year. We should have good produce and money coming in our pockets. Yes, we can ask for that, but not on Shabbat. That's not going to show up here. We want cherut. Sometimes it's called something else, but we want freedom. We want justice, mishpat. This was changed from getting rid of evil to evil, not evil people, but evilness. And Anita always says they should just turn their hearts to good. But it's like when you're thinking about there's war and there's anti-Semitism or all the, you say, get rid of that, get rid of that. And you can really put your heart into it when you get to this one. You know, it's very passionate. Yeah, there's injustice. I want mishpat. I want justice. There's evil. Yeah, get rid of evil. Then we go to tzaddikim, all of you holy people. And we pray for all the holy people. We pray for Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. We pray for Yeshua. We want redemption and holiness to be in the world, and we want to be heard. Shomea tefillah means hear our prayer, God. You listen to every single person. And at the end of each of these, there's Baruch atah Adonai, blessed are you who hears prayer, who loves healing, who loves justice. In other words, it's reminding in a way ourselves and God that God is a God of all these wonderful qualities and we want to see it here on earth. Whereas on Shabbat, we just say, Kedushat Hayom, the holiness of this day. all of these that we ask for on regular days? Nope, because we have a kind of wish that everything should be perfect on Shabbat, that we don't need to ask for all of these things. So all of these are out, replaced by the holiness of the day. And when we're going to go through the prayer book to each of these prayers, you'll see that, but you'll know in your mind, you'll remember this slide and you'll say, aha, I see. We're only doing this. We're not doing all of these asking fors. Then we go back to the same, avodah, hoda'ah, sim shalom. Worship, may our worship be accepted. Avodah means work, but it also means service. And it's like the sacrifices of old are replaced by the words of our prayers that represent us today. Huge change. We don't go and bring a little dove or some kind of grain. We bring our words, and that's this section. Hoda'ah is thanks, same thing. Modim anachnu lach, we bow, we thank you. And sim shalom, always we end with a prayer for peace. And then there's usually a song to bring us out of the Amidah, like may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my maker. Or Oseh Shalom, may the one who makes peace in high places bring peace here. So we have, and when the choir comes, sometimes we sing other beautiful prayers and blessings to bring us out of the Amidah. Why do we need to bring brought out? And usually I start very quietly because we've been in meditation. So from somewhere in here, we go silent until we come to the prayer for peace. I'd like to stop for a minute because it's a lot of information and just see how you react to that and any questions you have. Then we'll go back to the slides. I'd like to stop for a minute and just see what your reaction is to this comparison. We haven't finished the comparison of the service yet, but we're just up through the Amidah. So let's have some reactions. Yes, Sheldon.
Is the weekday Amidah, is that the 18 or 19 petitions or benedictions? Is that the Shemona Esrei?
Yes. So why is it called 19? Because back in I don't know, somewhere between the 10th or the 12th century, they separated one of the prayers and they became two. But they had the name Shemona Esrei, so they kept it. But it's really 19. Yes, Susan.
Where would Shalom Rav come in?
Shalom Rav
Prayer
is,
that we never say.
yeah. So Shalom Rav is at the end of the Amidah, and sometimes we would sing it, and sometimes it's just part of your silent prayer. But that's where we would sing it. It's on the last page of the Amidah. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Anyone else about the Amidah or about the difference between the weekday and Erev Shabbat? Yes, Anita.
Yeah, actually more about Kaddish, which means separate, right? It's separate.
Holy, separate, yes.
Yeah, and holy is that we are separate from. But it started out with Kaddish de Rabbanan, right? That the rabbis,
Yes,
when they studied, to honor their study, at the end of study, they would just, say this blessing.
how about we hold on to that and we'll come back to that, I promise you, when we do Mourner's Kaddish, and we'll say how it came to be. And that's a very good point to make, but I'd like to save that for the end. So let's bookmark that. And when we come to Mourner's Kaddish, bring that up again, okay? But I just want to go up this far, up to the Amidah. And if you've come to morning prayers, does this make it clearer why the morning prayers are so long and in the evening they're much shorter? Okay, good. So let's go back to the rest of the service. We're still comparing the weekday to Shabbat. So Torah service is on Monday and Thursday in the morning. And the ark would be open, ki mitzion tetzei Torah. So the ark is opened, and you have a hakafa, which means the procession around the sanctuary, and then a blessing of Torah reading, the actual reading, and then before and after there's a blessing. Then we have something about healing, Hagbaha, which is holding it up high, and then putting Hachsarat Torah is returning the ark to the Torah, where we sing Eitz Chaim Hi, and that's the whole Torah service, which has its own pageantry, and where the Gabbai is so important because we want every word to be clear. And since there are no vowels or punctuation or numbers in the actual Torah scroll, you have to have a Gabbai, the sort of assistant, standing next there, looking with the vowels in the book, and or I print it out, and making sure that every word is correct. And that's their job, to correct the reader in case they make a mistake, not in the melody, but only in the pronunciation of the word, because it could be Emor, Amar, it could be a different version depending on the vowels. Let me just finish this. I added, we here at the JCSVV often have a brief Torah service on Friday evening, but traditionally that's on Saturday morning. When we have a Saturday morning service, we don't chant Torah on Friday night. We put it back where it belongs on Saturday morning. And then we have a drash, words about the Torah portion, making it relevant to our lives today. And then we go into the Misha Berach, the blessing of healing. I just wanted you to know what you recognize from our service. And then comes the conclusion, coming down the mountain from that 4 worlds, Aleinu, Mourner's Kaddish, and some closing song like Adon Olam, same thing, morning and evening. So now let's go to the Mourner's Kaddish. How did it get to be the Mourner's Kaddish? Because I must say, there's not one word about death there. It only says we will sanctify God's great name with all of our praises and all of our psalms and all of our exaltations, and it goes on and on and on, and it's a beautiful cadence to it. It's in Aramaic, most of it. And as Anita reminded us, it started out to be when a scholar died, the students would get together and study for the merit of the teacher. And they would say Kaddish de Rabbanan. They would say the rabbis or teachers concluding blessing. But then it got to be said when anyone died, because we said, in their own way, they were teachers, they were scholars. And then it got repeated and put and a little expanded with Oseh Shalom at the end, as specifically a Kaddish that the mourners would say. And usually, traditionally, only the mourners would stand. But since the Holocaust, it became customary in many congregations that we would all say Mourner's Kaddish. In one way, it's practice for those who are learning it, and it wouldn't shame those who don't know it well. But also, there's so many people who were cut off early in life and didn't have any next generations to say it. So it's a kind of kindness for those souls. So yes, Anita.
An interesting class I took on prayer, actually, from Rabbi Eli Comfer, I think he's with Hadar, said that it's in the future, because when you're mourning, and I've said this before, that for years after my dad died, I was not able to say Kaddish Yatom. I mean, I could say Kaddish de Rabbanan and Chansi Kaddish, but I couldn't say Kaddish Yatom.
Say why.
And he put it in terms of...
Say why you couldn't say it, please.
Because
explain.
I didn't feel like I could sanctify God's name for my dad dying at age of 49 and just sucking all the love out of our family, and my mom going crazy. So I had like real heavy duty emotional problems with losing this great love of my, Ahava Rabbah of my life. But when Rabbi Comfer said it's in the future, that we're saying Yid Gadol, Yid Kadash, Yid Kadash, Yid Gadol, that we hope that at some point in the future, we will be able to have the sense of wanting to sanctify God and, have all these positive feelings. And that put it in a totally different light for me.
So you see, it's possible to take a prayer, even a prayer that you have trouble with, that you feel, I can't say this and feel whole in my heart, and reinterpret it through a new teaching where then you say, I see it from a different lens now and I can say it. So that may happen with any of the part of the service. And my invitation to anyone who wants to lead is to go to those places where you don't quite understand it, or you can't quite translate it, or you have trouble with it, and find a new way inside it. And that is what our lay leadership training is for. So I really honor and acknowledge that explanation that Anita gave about how she was able to approach something that she had very, very great difficulty and good reason for, and found a way to understand it in a new way. Thank you. Mary.
So I realize it's incumbent upon us to say Kaddish for our parents, our spouses, and our children. But this past month, two former Holocaust, well, they were Holocaust survivors, have passed away that I was linked to for one reason or another. So is it appropriate to say their names even if there's no connection like that?
I believe there is, because it is comfort to the mourner, and who knows, perhaps it does help the soul in its journey of purification that you're mentioning the name by the merit of your saying Kaddish. It is a mitzvah for the child to say, for the parent and for these close relatives, but it's a good thing for us to remember those we were connected to in some way. Sometimes we say it for neighbors or friends or people who aren't even Jewish that influenced us. And I'm not going to stand on mitzvah ceremony and say only, only, only. I will say yes and more, because it opens up our hearts to those loving connections. And that's the way I see it. Sheila had her hand up.
The Haggadah, the finger raised. We didn't used to do that in our service, and it's been, well, until recently.
Right.
So
Well, it's
what is
a
it?
tradition to point and say this is, because you're saying V'zot HaTorah, but we don't want to point because it's sort of rude to point. So we do it kind of with our pinky, and I don't do it with an outstretched arm because that can look very bad. That can look like some other kind of a motion. So I kind of bend my arm and I go V'zot HaTorah. This is the Torah. We're acknowledging that although this is a scroll held up in a synagogue in Sedona, Arizona, we're acknowledging that this is the Torah that we got from through Moses on Mount Sinai in the form of tablets. Isn't that an amazing connection we're making? So it's just saying Zot HaTorah, this is the Torah, and it's a tradition to actually point in a more I would say polite way with a pinky rather than a finger like that. So
Thank you. That's really brand new.
okay, thank you. I'm glad there's something new and that you have questions. It's really important, and that there's something that's opening up a new possibility, because what's vitally important is that if you lead service, or even if you just come up to do one part of it, that you have a deeper meaning, a deeper understanding of what this all means and how it holds together. Because anyone could be trained to say, turn to page such and such for this prayer. That's not what we're after. We want you to understand and really enter this realm of prayer. Let me tell you a little story. When Reb Zalman Schechter Shalomi of blessed memory sometimes wanted to chant Torah, and he knew that this particular audience, there were very few people who understood Hebrew, and he would actually chant it in English. And I went to one of those services once with my son Amir, and Amir afterwards said to me, Ima, when Reb Zalman chants in English, I hear the Hebrew underneath.
Wow.
I never forgot that phrase. When you recite a prayer, I want all the depth of your knowledge and understanding and translation and personal investment to come through, because it will. So we want to scuba dive and not just snorkel. We want to really go to the depths of the meaning. And I hope that you get that when I'm leading a service, that there's, years and years and years of learning behind just reciting one prayer. And that's why sometimes I give a few introductions to each prayer, and I get you to the next place. I'm a tour guide of the soul, like I was a tour guide in Israel, pointing out important views and maybe doing it a different way each time. I don't prepare those. And so anyone who leads, and I've noticed many of you have done that, several of you here on this screen, are able to give your interpretation, and I go, oh, you know, it's as if I never heard that prayer before. So there's a comfort in knowing it well, but there's the imperative to know it more deeply each time. Sheila, you wanted to add something.
There's another piece to my question. It's about the davening, the bending. And David davens the whole time. We just bow in certain times.
Right. So there's davening.
Why and when?
Yeah, shuckling is where basically men, Orthodox men, would get into a rhythm, and they wouldn't be stopping for anything. They would shir ladonai, shir hadash, shir ladonai, Adonai malach. You know, it would be like what we call speed davening, and it would just go and go and go, and they'd get into this kind of a little altered state. But there's particular choreography where we're bending and bowing, saying we're thank you, modim anachnu, or blessed are you. And there's certain places where it's an actual choreograph where everybody's supposed to bend there. But the shuckling, that's something else. This kind of, yeah. I think that would be pretty distracting if I did that. I find in the Amidah, in the standing prayer, sometimes I sway a little bit, but I try to not be distracting and not to move too much. But if you feel like you're moving, man, jump around. They're riding a camel. You're funny. Yes, Anita.
So I do have a question about when I know in the Amidah, the first several times that we say Baruch, we bend our knee and we bow. Modim, we bend our knee and we bow. In Aleinu, Anachnu Korim, we bend our knees and we bow to say thank you. I have a tendency to bend my knees whenever I say Baruch.
I noticed that. And some people are doing that all the time in all the blessings. And there's nothing wrong with that. You feel it, you do it. But I asked the same question to my liturgy teacher, because I said some people are bowing all the time, and I'm used to only bowing at the Avot and the Gvurot and just in the beginning of the Amidah. And they said, that's where you should bend. And the other places, some people continue doing that. That was the best answer I got.
And it's also connected to Baruch is knee.
Right. So this is getting very specific, but when we have the call to prayer, we're saying, I bend the knee and I bow. So it's two motions. You're bending and you're bowing. And so some people kind of go, you know, but there really is a bending and a bowing. And we'll go over that more specifically near the end of our series.
Okay, but it's not incorrect to do it. It's just kind of.
Well, because you're saying I bend the knee. And
no, I mean, except what, you know, I mean, there's times when you're supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But with the other times, is it incorrect to do it?
I never think it's incorrect to bow. It's just extra and not necessary. That was the best. I asked the exact same question, and that was the best answer I got. So that's the best answer I can give you at this time. Mary.
I did read somewhere that when we're standing for the Amidah, we're supposedly emulating the angels in a way, and that we're not supposed to really move our feet around. Do you know?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That is true. As a matter of fact, in the Talmud, in Brachot, there's a section that says, even if there's a snake wound around your ankle, you're not to move. Even if your biggest yeshiva Rav comes in, you're not supposed to acknowledge or greet. You're supposed to be totally in the Amidah, the standing prayer. You're supposed to have your 2 feet standing, and you're supposed to be maybe like the angels, but also really concentrated. And so that's why when sometimes people walk out during the Amidah, I go, oh dear, you shouldn't be moving during the Amidah. And it's hard not to, because sometimes somebody bumps you or something happens. So, you're human, but it actually says, and I had my son, when I did a report on this back when I was a student, my son, Amir, drew me with a snake around my ankle for the Amidah. No one ever has heard that story before, but there it is. Okay, anything else about either the Amidah or this idea of a journey and a coming down? The idea of going through 4 worlds at every service and ending somewhat more elevated. The idea of the choreography being a cut and paste from all parts of Psalms and Proverbs and Exodus and Genesis, but put together in a way that it's a prayer service. That's really the essence of today. Yes, Anita.
So back to the moving and being like the angels and stuff like that. So Vikara Elveh, when the angels spoke to each other, we moved to do that.
Yes.
And then we rise up on our
Kadosh.
toes 3 times.
That's when we go on our
Kadosh,
tippy toes.
Kadosh.
Kadosh, Kadosh, right.
Okay, so we are moving, and we're actually moving our feet.
No, you're not. You're moving side to side and you're going tiptoes. You're not walking away. You're not taking 5
Oh, you're
steps.
not walking,
getting
but
somewhere.
it is still a foot motion. When you go kadosh, 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 when you're raising up on your toes,
Right. That's
you're not walking, but you're
Right.
still moving your feet.
You're rising on your toes. And oh, sorry, I've got a message here. Oh. Very, very, very annoying. Okay. Actually, we don't do it correctly. It should be the congregation saying it first, and then the leader repeats, and the congregation and the leader. But I find that difficult in case people don't know, so I just lead the whole thing. And it should be like that for the morning. And I was thinking every single time we do it, Anita, I think, is this the time I should introduce that and change it? And so we might, now that I've said it, we might look at that on Wednesday morning, but don't worry about it.
Okay, so how should we do it? How should we do it?
Let me put that off right now, because I'll do that for the Wednesday morning minyan, okay? It's the Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh in the morning. It's just, in traditional places, the kahal knows what they're doing and they lead, and then there's a repetition. But usually you've got the leader and everybody else answering. And I always wondered, why do they have it backwards that way? And no one's been able to answer that. And so now you know some of my own questions that come up every single time I lead a service. Okay, let us look now at an overview of what we've just done today. Let's look at overview of Shabbat. Why is this here? What is Erev Shabbat? It's a very particular service and a very particular time. It's a transition from the weekday of doing to the calm, relaxing atmosphere of being. That's why sometimes I do a kind of breathing meditation, especially if I see people are kind of bubbly and they're still talking, and breathe in the restful air of this synagogue. Breathe out the noise of the week. Remember, sometimes I do that. That's not traditional. It's just, there are many ways to achieve that. And that was one way I thought of, because this is Sedona and many of you are meditators. So that's why I did that. We want to promote a friendly feeling of community. So there's a moment where people say Shabbat Shalom. If we have time, we get out of our chairs. If not, if it's filled, then just turn to somebody. But there's this sense of, I'm not doing this alone. And it's kind of why I wish on Zoom everybody could see each other, but it is a webinar at this point, and so people can't see each other. In other congregations, they have it so that people can see each other. And maybe in the future we'll consider doing that. We did it for security as a webinar back during COVID, and we just never changed it. But this feeling of kehillah, of community, of praying together, it lifts us up, because maybe you had a down day, maybe you're tired, maybe you don't know the prayers, maybe it's your first time here. Community lifts you up. We want to set the mood with music, like a nigun, a reading, with the candle lighting. There's this mood that we introduce, so people slowly are drawn in. By the time we get to the Baruch Hu, then we're ready to call each other to prayer. But there's a real taking seriously this whole introduction. We also want to acknowledge members, guests, and viewers. And you do that during the service and at the announcements. And we have just come up with something to help Sybil or any other board member who's doing the announcements, which is a card where people will write their name, their contact information, where they call home, how did you hear of the JCSVB, and what brought you to the service. So Sybil will be able to say, and Andrea Smith from Kalamazoo is here. Please stand up. It'll be a lot easier for the person giving the announcements. It'll be more smoother for those viewing. And also we'll have the cards for following up if we want. So I'm very happy about that. Now, we are all going to need a detailed outline for the leader with notes of participants, transitions, pages, slides, your own Devar Torah, or whoever is giving the sermon or the Devar Torah, the drash, whatever you want to call it. The Hebrew, the blessings, making sure you have the yads for the Torah reading, a copy of the handout. There's a lot of things you need. You need a list of the birthdays, anniversaries, yard site, and whatever notes or props. So I give the tech team a 2 or 3 page, very brief outline that says, what's the prayer, what page or slide is it on, who's doing it, and any notes. But I have a 20-page outline for myself because I want perhaps a different reading for introducing a prayer. I want to know the chords of a particular new melody that I haven't done in a while. I want some other information. And so I have many, many pages, and I'm very, very organized. You don't want to be up there and go, oh, what's happening now when the pages are flying? You really want to know what's coming next and have a backup, because something can go wrong. Maybe you misplaced the yard site list. I always have a backup. One time I realized that I had been given the December one and it was like July. And I had the backup and I said, wait, I read the wrong list, and I read the good list. That one time I was glad I had the backup. Now, what I'm telling you now is the behind the scenes kind of leadership stuff. But whoever's on today, I just want you to know that a lot goes into leading, and that we need a lot of support and compassion because you're juggling so many things for the leader. And if they forget something, just, you can gently call it out. How many times has Mary said, what about Elenu? And Anita, say, what about Kaddish? And I go, oh yeah. Even the most experienced leader can forget something or miss a page. And you can be gently reminded, and then you just go on. You just go on. You just go on, because you're on this journey. And that's another thing. When someone has a reading, they shouldn't come up and say Shabbat Shalom, because that's like you're in 4th gear and you're on the highway, and then you're back in 1st gear. Just keep going. Just, you're part of a flow. You come up, you give your reading, you come up and you do this blessing, you come up, whatever it is you have, and you don't keep saying Shabbat Shalom until we get to the holy announcements. And that person is allowed to say Shabbat Shalom, because now we're kind of back down to Malchut. We're back down to this world, and this is announcements. So this is just to show you all the things that you're needing to have, and you don't have to do it all. You might say, you know what? I want to lead this part, but someone else should read the Shema part. Someone else should do the Devar Torah. Someone else should do the blessings for healing. There's many, many, many possibilities. And there are many ways to do it. And the outline is available to you. Whoever does the lay leadership, we'll work on it. Whoever needs any of these pieces of information between Andrea and me, you have them all. You don't have to invent the wheel. To figure out what is the Torah portion of the week, I have it in Hebrew, I have it in English. I have this material after almost 20 years of doing these Erev Shabbat services. You have all the resources you need. If you need a review of a melody, fine. But you should go over it and over it and over it before you lead. And don't just think, oh, well, I know the page numbers. Sorry, not enough. So looking ahead to week 2, I'm going to share the outline and the pages in the prayer book. If you have a Mishkan Tefillah, have it open. I'll show some slides, but it's nice if you have the book. I'll talk about the prayers that we almost always do, whether we sing them or read them, and I try to alternate. Or sometimes we have a substitute reading or a poem, but has the same essence, the same idea, the same energetic message. I'll show the prayers which can be omitted because either time constraints, which sometimes happens, you have a guest or it's a holiday and you've got something extra, you've got the choir. And if we've added something, you ought to take something else because it's not fair to people who expect about an hour and 15 minutes if you go way over time. So then you have to know, and you can't omit someone else's part. You can omit your own. You can make it shorter. You can be humble about that. Don't ever cut out somebody else's part. Just cut out your own. Yes. And different melodies depending on your mood, the season, the holiday, the choice, what you grew up with, you want to bring back. Maybe there's a contemporary something by Todd Herzog or by Craig Taubman, and you want to bring that in. Let's do it because it's supposed to rouse the heart and elevate. And doing that is part of being a leader. You know, I gave the sermon Sunday at the Church of the Red Rocks, and one of the people who were there knew Reb Zalman and said that it reminded me of a story. So here's another Reb Zalman story. So one time at a Buddhist retreat, one of the people there said, Reb Zalman, teach me to dance Jewish. And Reb Zalman said, I can't, because if you're really dancing Jewish, you don't know the next step. So there's an idea of a flow, being in the flow. And sometimes things will come out in a blessing or as an introduction or after a prayer that you didn't expect. Trust that. Now, sometimes it takes many times of leading with your absolute notes and page by page to be able to feel that free, but allow it. It's one of the most rewarding parts of the service for me after I've just chanted from the Torah and I've really gotten inside the words, and suddenly I'll see a link between the theme of the Torah portion and the person standing in front of me. I have never yet prepared the blessing. And every once in a while, it happened like 2-3 weeks ago, the editor inside, we all have that editor, said, you have no idea what you're going to say and you have no idea of the connection. What are you going to do? And so the other part of me said, thank you for your input. I'll talk to you later. I'm in the middle of a service here. And I turned to the person and I was really surprised by what came out, and it was just perfect. So there's keva and kavanah. Keva is the structure. It's the book. It's the pages. It's the order of service. And then there's kavanah, which means how you aim, how you intend, what you bring personally. And there's got to be a balance, because if it's only kavanah, you can get lost in the woods and sort of forget where you are. If it's only keva, it can be a little dry and boring. Keva, kavanah, the structure and the interpretation in the moment and the juice. You know, part of my mission as a rabbi is to bring joyful, juicy Judaism to the next generation. And I also want to bring some juice to every service. So no two are alike. Even though the keva is pretty much the same, the kavanah is different. I hope, I trust, I pray. So that is a conclusion of our first overview of what's in that prayer service and how is it different from Erev Shabbat. And then we'll dive into specific Erev Shabbat next week. So I'd like to end with a nigun, which I actually started with, but there was nobody there because obviously I was on a different link, and I'm going to have to ask Jenny about that. Yes, Harold.
Very nice class. Thank you very much.
Okay, here we go. La 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 la
Wait,
la.
Sheldon-
Sheldon has a
la,
question.
la. Yes, Sheldon. What?
On the next to the last slide that you just showed, at the bottom, you gave a list of the honors, the aliyot, the slides, the yurtzeit. That's what I found to be the most time-consuming and difficult part of leading the service. Who's supposed to do that? Does RAC have a person that does that, or do we go through all this?
Yeah, so between myself, Marissa, and the list of birthdays, anniversaries, and yard sites, that's who you should start to call. And if you need help, we can say, it can be done by a number of people. Usually if someone is sponsoring an oneg, they're the ones who take most of the honors or give them out to their friends. So there's a whole bunch of ways to answer that. And when we get to the actual outline, I'll give some more suggestions. And you see, you did it, you learned it, and that's, now we know where to give our attention, because all of that information is very easily done and easily available. All you have to do is ask. Yes, Anita.
So before you start your Nigun, I just want to be sure that everybody is going to be attending Friday night services. And Bezrat Hashem, I'm planning to be there, that we're going to have, not me as a special guest, we're going to have this really amazing special guest who's going to be there. And the oneg afterwards will be to celebrate Lag BaOmer.
So Lag BaOmer is this intermediate holiday between Passover and Shavuot, the 33rd day of counting the Omer, which we are doing in a mystical way. And it's it's sort of it's called a minor holiday, but it has some very interesting aspects to it. And our attention to it will take the place of the Torah service this Friday. Do come. Thank you for reminding us, Anita. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Shalom, everybody.